Hello, and welcome to Grade.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Jeff Rook, Pacific Director at PEER, Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, an organization protecting public employees who protect the environment. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that is supporting current and former government employees who are seeking a higher standard of environmental ethics and scientific integrity within their agency. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to Grade.com Talks. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Could you please tell us what does PEER do for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Sure. We're a service organization, so we're completely intake driven, and employees come to us in various states of upset. In some cases, they've gotten in trouble because they've reported something, or their work is becoming politically inconvenient, or there's some sort of obstruction that they feel conscience bound to address. Sometimes we've been described as a shelter for battered staff. So people that work inside these agencies are often dealing with fairly large political forces, mainly brought by the regulated industry or other special interests, in which they have very little institutional support inside the agency, and often it's them against the entire agency. And so how we answer the phone, which is how may I help you, is really what our service model is. So sometimes they need legal defense against, say, a disciplinary action or an attempt to fire them. Sometimes what they're asking us to do is expose problems to sort of shame the agency into doing the right thing. And in extreme instances, we've been asked to sue the agency based upon evidence provided by their own insiders of systemic non-performance or malfeasance. And so because our legal actions are guided by the insiders in the agency, they tend to be more effective because our arrows, if you will, are sort of laser guided to the target. And the idea of working with public employees is that they are an underutilized part of the environmental movement. Their expertise, a whole range of disciplines, often is kept from fully serving the public, and we often bridge that gap so that the information of concern, the issues are ventilated without official censorship.
Mm. It's very important, as you mentioned, that you are a bridge, you are a tool for public employees who are courageous enough, who are very engaged in protecting the environment, and you help them to shed the light into the issues that they are facing, and also you're defending them and making sure their voices are being heard. And it's very, very important, as you mentioned, in their agencies. This is not always the case where they might get enough support, where they might have a system that actually takes into considerations all the aspects involved. So having an organization, a platform that addresses those challenges is very, very important. And the formation of the story of the formation of your organization is a wonderful indication of that. A ranger who stood up against logging by the Forest Service is such an inspiring story. Could you please tell us that story for our viewers?
Sure.
How your organization was formed?
We started in work first in the Forest Service, and there was a timber sale planner named Jeff DeBonis working on the Willamette National Forest in Oregon, who became convinced, based upon his prior experience in the Peace Corps, that he was seeing the same pattern of destructive overlogging that he was seeing in Central America. And he started to raise concerns about it, and was told basically in one of his biological opinions on a proposed sale, you've written the brief for the environmental community, change it. So he changed his opinion, but took his original down to the environmental community and said, I must have written your brief for you, please use it. And he then, the Forest Service was one of the first agencies that had complete email connectivity, and so he sent out an email calling for people who were concerned about the direction of the agency to join a new organization, and the organization sort of took off. And after a year or so, the question was raised as, why can't we take this level of internal activism beyond the Forest Service to other agencies? And from that, PEER was born, and our kind of awkward name produces the pronounceable acronym of PEER, which denotes that we're looking into it. We're a watchdog organization, but also more importantly that the specialists that work in these agencies have a seat at the table. They're a peer. They're not just staff. Their expertise has to be accounted for, and we're the mechanisms sometimes by which that is done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the story is very inspiring that Jeff, your founder, saw the challenges that impacted him and impacted the work that he was doing, and then he raised the voices and he was able to make the change in the Forest Service, and then this grew into more different agencies, as mentioned by you, in working in all aspects in the government system. So that's very great and interesting story to observe. There is a misconception that public employees are disengaged, but your work and the initiatives that public workers bring on tell us completely a different story. Could you please tell us about the importance of public workers protecting the environment and the change that they are leading?
Well, there are about 250,000 people who work in environmental and public health agencies in the United States, and in many instances, their expertise is not allowed to be fully engaged because the agency is dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. And these agencies, to the public, they appear to be kind of monolithic blocks, but really they're complex organizations with a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of dynamics, and so in some instances, environmental critics of an agency will find that inside the agency, there are people who agree with them, but are not able to express that agreement. And so there's sort of different things that are going on. And so the idea that, and we don't think that this is a case where this is a majoritarian movement. We're talking about cadres of activists inside the agencies who, by virtue of their expertise and their position, are often able to leverage great change for the agency. And we're talking about everything from the range from the people we've represented have been backcountry park rangers at Yellowstone all the way to the first female chief of the park police, or a field microbiologist in an agency like the U.S. Geological Survey, all the way to the managing director of the Chemical Safety Board. So there's a whole range of people at different levels from the bottom to the top that utilize our services when they feel that the agency is not functioning properly and there's a chance to improve the level and quality of public service with just a little help.
Mm-hmm. Wow, they are indeed experts in what they are doing, and they actually care. They are very engaged. However, the system that currently exists doesn't really allow them to use their expertise to the fullest, despite them being the critics, despite them taking initiatives and leading the change. And you mentioned the range of public workers that you work from. They are very different in different aspects in the work, but they all are indicators that they care about their work and they want to protect our environment. And through your work, they are able to voice their concerns, and you are able to protect their initiatives. And one way that public employees come to you with their problem is through whistleblowing. Could you please tell us why there is a need for whistleblowing in the current system? Do they not get enough support if they raise their concerns? And if you could share a recent story of a whistleblower that allowed you to reach and share their story, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Our website, which is peer.org, is filled with a lot of these stories and lots of examples. And the employees come to us by phone, through our website. Often they're referred by colleagues, and in many instances they're referred by other environmental groups or by public employee unions. So, for example, unions tend to have memberships that are active, but unions can't work on matters outside of the scope of collective bargaining, so they're limited to wages, hours, and working conditions. But when you get issues that go to the mission of the agency, the integrity of its scientific information and things like that that are beyond collective bargaining, that's where we're called in, because those issues are our meat and potatoes. And so sometimes, people come to us and point out a program that the agency has not been implemented. So based upon EPA employees, we were able to sue EPA and force them to adopt one of the major public health measures of the last 25 years, which was the removal of lead paint exposure in the process of repairing and renovating older homes. It's a pathway of lead exposure for an estimated 1.4 million American children each year. This was a program that EPA had basically waylaid. Through the activists, we were able to bring this information forward, sue the agency, force them to adopt the program and implement it, and it's now working very successfully. There are lots of other examples of where employees have illustrated things like agencies internally cooking their books to justify projects that otherwise aren't justified. And those exposures have stopped that kind of boondoggle parade. And there's a number of cases where we have scientists who are reviewing assessments or evaluations that are done for public health purposes that are being skewed, usually under industry pressure, in a way that puts workers and consumers in harm's way and subject to disclosure. So right now, one of the things we're working on is the existence of dangerous chemicals in pet collars and flea control devices for pets that not only infect the pets, but also the owner pets the pet can sometimes get into their system, and it's a completely undisclosed pathway for potential harm. So those disclosures are pressing EPA to do a much, much better job than they do now regulating pesticides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so whistleblowers, when they see that the scientific integrity of the work and the mission of the agency that they work in is not being fully followed in, and then they see a need to raise and voice their concerns because what the organization is doing, maybe the leadership of the organization is doing, is not necessarily in lights with the mission, the original mission of the government agency. And it's very important that the public is aware of such issues and the actual beneficial work that those agencies need to be doing is being done through such initiatives. Another aspect of how you work besides taking the initiatives of public employees that do whistleblowing is you shine the light on the issues. Could you please tell us how you are able to do so?
Well, the employees are the source of what we know, and in some instances they'll leak us the documents, but more often than not, they'll tell us where they are, and we use the Freedom of Information Act to go get the documents. Mm-hmm. We consider FOIA, as it's called, a safe form of whistleblowing in that individuals don't have to come forward. They can just let us know what the documents are that should be ventilated, and we will go and get them. And it's to the point where we now file a FOIA suit once every 3 to 4 weeks all year, and that hasn't abated under the Biden administration. And once we get these documents, often by virtue of court order, the significance of the documents is accentuated because it took literally a federal case to get them to see the light of day. And these formerly secret documents now become exposed. And so we call it the information laundromat, where people are sort of pointing us to the inside information and helping us to obtain it in a way that we call it delivering the message, but not the messenger. And so what we do, whistleblower defense, we do everything we can to avoid putting an employee in a situation where their career is in jeopardy because their career is an important environmental asset. Conscientious people working in these agencies should be kept in the agencies and not needlessly exposed. Sometimes it's unavoidable, or they need to come forward for a variety of reasons. And when they do, it's our job to make sure they do so in the most protected and effective way. But if their identity isn't key to the issue, obtaining the documents is a way to force the agency to deal with the issue in a manner that doesn't allow them to detract or raise issues about the source, or suggesting that the source of the information is a bad employee or disloyal or whatnot. It's much more difficult to change the subject when the documents are there from the own agency's letterhead, and it's undeniable that what they've done is provable.
Mm-hmm. That's quite interesting that you are able to request documents on a federal level through the court system, and then once you analyze those materials, you are able to shine the lights on the issues that are brought to you by the employees without jeopardizing, as mentioned by you, their careers, their future, and their expertise in the field in the future. Another way that your organization works is you improve laws and regulations, and you are also enforcing the environmental law. Could you please tell us your work in this area and some of the recent projects that you were able to implement?
So some of our members and clients are environmental enforcement agents, attorneys, rangers, inspectors, and things like that. And they use our offices to expose obstruction of justice where it's preventing prosecution of environmental or public health crimes. Mm-hmm. In addition, we have sponsored whistleblower laws in several states. So, for example, my state here, California, has a whistleblower statute that's among the strongest in the country that we drafted, that was enacted that protects state employees. Right now, a major area of interest for us and activity is the area of scientific integrity. For the most part, governments aren't required to tell you the truth. And the status of scientific information is often treated as a matter of opinion, in which case government agencies traditionally alter scientific and technical information so that it supports their talking points. And that practice has sort of ebbed and flowed, but certainly during the Trump administration, what they called alternative facts reached a level that was very distressing. And there's now a renewed effort to provide some sort of safeguards to make sure that scientific information cannot be altered or suppressed for political reasons. And that work isn't done, it's sort of just beginning, but it's very exciting because we're creating a whole new area of law, a law of science that will protect the integrity of the information and address the central gap in the way that our government operates, in that honesty is no defense. So honesty, truth and honesty have to be given some sort of legal status, and that work is still underway, unfortunately.
It's great to see your work in scientific integrity and making it in the law that every documentation and the work that is being put down is actually scientific based, factual based, rather than misinformation that being spread through the media and other resources available. But if we have a science-based, science integrity-based law that would protect it and that would raise the awareness and make sure that the climate and the environmental issues are based, have scientific integrity is very important. And the fact you mentioned, not only your organization is improving laws and drafting law proposals, but you also are enforcing them through raising the voices of the employees, public employees, and that's very, very important to see, both in the implementation as well as the information of the cycle of the protecting environment.
But it's not only just disclosing the information. Sometimes it's putting it in the form of a complaint that will require some sort of action, or in extreme cases, we go to court and directly enforce under citizen enforcement laws where the government has refused to act. Mm-hmm. So the request to us from employees is help us make this work the way it was supposed to, and we try to be as creative as we can to look at the whole range of tools that can be brought to bear to make the government function the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the end result is actually taking action and making sure that the work is being done, whether if it has to go through the court, whether you have to enforce it on such a higher level or in a different level. So that's great to see your work in all, as mentioned, formation, implementation, and then enforcement of the law. So very wonderful. If someone would like to support Peer, how can they do that?
The easiest way is to go to our website, which is peer.org, and there's a donate button, and they can join and sign up and get our literature, both newsletters as well as bi-monthly bulletins, and sort of keep up to date with us. And that's the easiest way is through the website.
Wonderful. The link to the Peer website will be provided in the description. So you viewing and listening can go to the website and familiarize yourself with the great work Jeff and the team at Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility is doing. Thank you so much, Jeff. It was wonderful to get to know you and wonderful work your organization is doing.
Thank you.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button, because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithm that this conversation is important, that we need to protect public employees who protect the environment. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.